So the other day I made a video on cynicism, and what most people found way more interesting than cynicism was nihilism. My thoughts on nihilism, and rather, I guess, my lack of thoughts on nihilism, right? I covered basically the fact that I think it's somewhat grounded in reality and prevalent today, but I didn't really go into it because that's not what the video is going to be about. Today I want to go into it because I do think nihilism is very interesting, and I actually think that I would pitch the idea that nihilism is perhaps the closest thing that we have to a prevailing philosophy of today, right? Like if you go back through history when philosophers are coming up with philosophy or whatever they're really doing, I don't know if, it's not really a real job, right? But whatever they're doing, as they come up with it, it's pretty common for it to be, I don't know if I'd say practiced, but it's rare that there's nothing new coming up, right? Like today in the modern day, we don't have a philosopher sitting down being like, oh, I'm gonna make this new ism, right? At least not one that's in public consciousness, that's for sure, right? Nihilism, I think, is the closest thing we have to that, the closest thing we have to a prevailing ideology that's being practiced. And I really do I say practiced very literally. I do think that we are practicing nihilism through the internet. First and foremost, I want to make some distinctions, right? Because not only on the internet, but in real life, if you mention nihilism to anyone, they're going to right off the bat say, well, nihilism's not really a negative ideology as it's usually framed. Ideology is not really the word. A negative philosophy, rather, as it's usually framed. Nihilism is not the idea that life has no inherent meaning or value. It's that you can create your own meaning, or that it's freeing that it has no meaning. And listen, you're not wrong that there's a wide variety of thought under the nihilism umbrella, but I think that we should make distinctions between some terms just for the use of conversation here. Nihilism, in its simple form definition, is the idea that life has no inherent meaning or value. That is the definition of nihilism. Branching off of that is existentialism. The idea that nihilism has no inherent meaning, or that rather life has no inherent meaning, however, you can make your own. You can go on to create your own meaning to life, right? And then, of course, right next to existentialism is absurdism, the idea that life has no inherent meaning, life has no inherent value. However, not only does that make all life equally valueless, it also means that even though you can't really make meaning 100% in philosophical terms, as many of the other existentialists say you can, you should still, grit up against it anyways. You shouldn't give into a pessimistic nihilism, right? And I want to make sure we also clarify here that just because those are the terms of the initial nihilism definition, once again, doesn't mean there's not a wide umbrella of thought that comes out of nihilism, especially with, as I believe, it being the prevailing philosophical idea of the day, right? Life has no inherent meaning or value. You can get a lot of things off that. You could see that and go, oh, I feel so much more good now. That's a reasonable thing to think after believing that conclusion about life, right? Sort of like in school when the teacher goes, like you're worried about the test and the teacher right before the test goes, oh, by the way, this test doesn't count towards your grade. That's sort of what it could feel like for a lot of people. And that's a fine thing. I think it's very important to understand because we always want to group these into certain, we want to put a lot of lists of traits that come along with these philosophies. It's really hard to do that, especially once you get into something like nihilism, which is, I don't want to sort of, this is kind of a big statement to make, but it's something I believe. It's more of an observation, right? Like, I think if we were to do sort of a history kind of thing here, if we're trying to historicalize a lot of what we're saying here, as religion's on the decline, famous guy, Nietzsche, God's dead, all that, he's talking about that, religion's on the decline, it makes sense that as religion goes away and people look for other forms of value, when they can't find them, they go, we are just like a bunch of guys on this floating rock. And then, they get looped into that. However, just because it is an observation doesn't mean that it can't become a philosophy that is very much, and this is probably going to be maybe the hardest part to even articulate of this idea. It's practiced. I do believe nihilism is practiced. Hear me out here. I think that through the internet, we are all practicing nihilism daily, right? Specifically through memes and shitposting and joking around on the internet. This is hard to articulate because the internet is such an amorphous blob of all these things going on at the same time, right? And where my feed might be one thing, yours might be another, and yours might be more nihilistic. There are definitely people watching this going, you know, fucking duh. Like my feed, I got that a year ago. And then, you know, for me, it might be like, I kind of think this. And then for other people who have a very different feed, it might be, oh, you know, I don't know what this guy's talking about, right? That's the trouble with talking about the internet always, is no two people have the same experience of the internet. However, I do think that in the way that a lot of people use the internet, I do think that there are tinges in a lot of these jokes of nihilism, right? And I think part of this is not so much like when you say something like this, I guess sort of the almost assumed idea is like, oh, behind every post, there is the idea that like life doesn't really matter, you know? That's not exactly what I'm saying. I mean, I think one could come to that conclusion. I don't think that that's super inaccurate. I think more I'm saying this. On the internet, especially in like memes and that kind of cultural space, right? You can't really care about anything. That's a big trait of the internet, right? If you care about something, if you're sincere, not good. Not good, you're gonna, you know, it's not good, right? It's cringe or whatever people like to call it, right? I think this is why so much of life, the culture and how it moves, is now through irony. This is something we've discussed at length on this show. Irony is like the biggest cultural mover now. If you can make something ironic, it's gonna be the biggest thing on earth in 5 years, 100%. Because nobody can really be, it's seen as weakness to be like, I care about this idea and I'm gonna fight for it, right? Even like, this is kind of veering off into weird territory, I feel, but even I want to use an example like political causes, right? Back in the, like if you go 100 years back, the way they would go and do politics or try and convince people is hand out pamphlets and be like, please, like I really believe in this, please get on board, you know, that kind of thing. Nowadays, the main way that this is all distributed is through guys posting like, you know, you name it, memes. It's all memes about dumb stuff that doesn't really have anything to do with anything, right? This is, I don't think you can ignore this. I don't think that you can act like this is nothing. I think that this is definitely a huge indicator of where we're all at. The fact that like, you know, you can't just be walking up to people on the street with brochures anymore because people are either so jaded or, you know, whatever it might be that you believe this is coming from. You know, I think the big question could also be why nihilism is the thing today, right? I think that's a bigger question that I'm capable of answering. I think it's a worthwhile one to answer, one that I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But I actually think that that's the main point here, is like or rather the main example, is this idea of how politics are practiced. Because it is super indicative of things, right? The fact that you can't, I mean, if somebody DM'd you today on the internet and was like, listen, this is my thing, I really believe in this, we have an election coming up in, you know, your district next week, please vote. You would be like, this is so weird. That's never happened. Isn't it crazy that doesn't happen at all? But if you see 100 posts about something, you know, you're like, oh, like I kind of get this, I kind of know what this thing is, right? And this isn't to say that all posting is the same, right? Some people are the meme accounts posting things, some people are, you know, I mean, here in New York, we had an election of mayor who used social media like a really great way of just like giving his message out there, right? That's considered fine. But how much of that was also bolstered by the people around it making jokes about it, right? I think that there's a degree in all of this that a lack of inherent meaning has created this void where humor and nihilism is the only way that we all effectively communicate now. This is the painting. Great cherries today. Really good. These are the best cherries yet. Yeah, these are really good. Go check us out on the TikTok and the Instagram. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, this has been Paint Talk episode 325. My name is Max Dice, and I'm every morning painting and talking with you all.